What's good, people? Izzy Max here, back again for another pregame. This is week 4. We are on a roll with this, actually getting it correct. But as always, I'm joined by Dan. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing much better this week. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good. Just busy, life. But other than that, pregame this week's going to be interesting. There were a couple matches last week that we were kind of talking through that kind of went the way we expected. But I think this week there's going to be a lot less of that. Do you kind of agree this week?
Yeah, I think this week there are less clear-cut bad matchups. And by that I don't mean like a good team versus a bad team. I mean one where even if the teams seem about equal overall, one just has a very one-sided matchup into the other. I think there are significantly less of them this week, although there are probably still one or two.
Oh, for sure. But without further ado, first we're going to break down the transactions. Also, for coaches on the doc, I have added how many transactions you have left. It'll be under your team page, or under your team thing on the draft page. But why don't you go ahead and start, since it's me at the top here.
Yeah, so you dropped Pingoro for Purloin, which you misspelled, but...
Yeah, there's two R's.
Beyond that, Purloin is something that I've got a lot of experience with using. It's very, very similar to Lipard. I think it is quite a good option there. So I don't know how much Pangoro was going to come for you, but Purloin is just something that you can bring any week. And I think a Pokemon you can bring any week is absolutely worth a slot, especially in a tier 4 slot. So I like the transaction.
Yeah, so there was something that I was feeling lacking a lot in my team, and that was just priority. Not so much attacks, just like statuses. Maybe I don't want to bring Pelipper 1 week, but I still want weather control. And then just things like that. But this is a 2-tier trade. Only Matt knows what my next transaction is going to be. So it's going to be interesting.
Why don't you tell the people what your next transaction is going to be?
No way. It's going to be interesting. Not a lot of people will see it coming. But yeah, so be ready for next week. It's going to be an interesting trade. But next up, we have Charles actually dropping the Jolteon for Cursula. So for me, this does help his Trick Room matchup. Specifically if he wants to set it, because Turtonator, it's not all that great. But I really liked the Jolteon on his team. Being fast, being able to like fast rain dances and things like that. And offer him a fair bit of offense. So there are very big pros and cons to this. I think there are more pros because he was susceptible to the opponent team just setting Trick Room and going in. So I like this more than I don't, but Jolteon, kind of sad to see it leave. What do you think?
Yeah, I really like Jolteon in this team too, but you're right. Charles was probably the softest to Trick Room in the league. So adding just a counter Trick Room mode that makes you double think if you just want to bring Trick Room into him, it probably helps him building in the long term, even if he loses the versatility and the offensive output that the Jolteon can just have in that base 130 speed stat. So, slight improvement here. I agree I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I do think it is an improvement for the team.
I think it was the best Trick Room Mon still on the board.
Yes.
For its price, of course. Why don't you do the next one? Anthony putting a Mon in a time chamber.
Yeah, so he unevolved his Mr. Rhyme to become bulkier. Probably a better support option, but a bit worse offensively. And he also wanted the Kanto version, but got the Galar version because John didn't want to give it up.
They're in different tiers.
Yeah. But, I mean, I think it's a fine trade. I personally like the offensive output of Mr. Rhyme more, but I understand on his team that it got the offensive output already, so maybe the bulky version is what he wants. Like, it seems pretty lateral to me, but, like, the difference is going to be negligible one way or another. So I'm gonna trust his judgment that the bulk is what his team needs more than the output of the Mr. Rhyme.
All right, you ready? This is maybe, I might be thinking too much into this. The one reason he did this, item selection. You look at his team, Mr. Rhyme, Focus Sash, probably, There's a lot on his team that wants a Focus Sash. Riolu, Barraskewda. So you know, I kind of see it. They
Get
basically
the
do
same
this.
thing, but in a Violite.
Yeah.
I can see that.
But yeah, whatever. Do I think it's gonna come? No, because I think he mostly has his core 5 or 6 kind of locked down. But it could have his uses. Next up, Burst. Already said in the Discord that this was just kind of a lateral trade. I wish it was a little bit more. I don't like the Hitmonlee, but I wish it was dropped for the Cursula, which was taken later. Because these are in backwards order. I picked last. Just because his Trick Room mode, and I've said it in the Discord, so I'm not gonna over harp on it, but it's solely weak to fire and fighting, and the Cursula would have at least helped with that. But Mienshao is definitely not a bad Pokemon, you know. It does a lot of the same things that Hitmonlee does, but I think a little better because you don't have to proc that Unburden to get a lot of the things off. So, lateral trade, I do like Mienshao better than Hitmonlee, but I just wish this was kind of something else.
Yeah, I think it's an improvement for his team, but the way in which he discussed it makes me not like the trade as much. If I just see this in a vacuum, I think it's good for his team. But when he says, "I didn't know what to do, so I just decided to do a lateral move," if we had unlimited transactions for the season, that's fine with me. You want to change it up, I get it. But in a season with limited transactions, you don't want to waste one of your transactions in a lateral move if you don't
Especially
have
not early.
a way for it. If you don't have a way for it to. That you know it's going to impact your team. So, in a vacuum, like the trade, based on his commentary surrounding it, not as big a fan.
Yep. Why don't you take the next one? You had some thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I have thoughts about Toxicroak for Sandslash. I understand that she has Urshifu, so she doesn't need Toxicroak, but Urshifu doesn't have Fake Out or a water immunity, and I know her team doesn't need the water immunity, but it's nice to have immunities. And I just think Sandslash is generally not great, but it does more for her team than the Toxicroak. Like, I see that as well, but I just think the utility that Toxicroak offers is more than the utility Sandslash offers. I think Toxicroak comes to a greater percentage of matches, but Sandslash has a greater impact on the matches that it comes to. So it's probably a slight upgrade for me, but I know that I'm also probably the lowest person on that trade, so most people are going to say that's a much stronger upgrade.
So, because I kind of talked to her about this one. Sandslash offers 2 things. When she sets Trick Room, her only real Trick Room on is honestly Snorlax. And she was talking to me about my Armaldo. So Sandslash, while it's not Armaldo, it does the same thing to where it can be fast in weather or decently slow in Trick Room. So it does offer more than the Toxicroak did, because honestly, Toxicroak would have just been a fake out bot. Which, whatever. But Toxicroak wasn't really offering anything other than that, and at least Sandslash does offer something you kind of have to prep for. You know, you see that now she has Sandslash and you're kind of weak to Ice. Well, now you have to speed creep way higher than, 105? 115, I think is her fastest, something like that. So, you know, it does offer a little bit more. And it's a tier 4 slot. Like, it's the lowest weather she could grab, and I think it just kind of fits. Moving on, though, we got Raz dropping Dunsparce for Behem. Pure upgrade. As much as Dunsparce is awesome, it's kind of a meme pick, and Behem just offers a lot. So this is another Psychic type, but it does different things. It sets Trick Room mostly reliably. You do have to have some support because it is decently frail. But this thing can sweep in Trick Room, and it's not even hard to do it. So I do like this one. I don't think Dunsparce was ever coming. Yeah,
I know why he had the Dunsparce. I've seen him use it in a different league before, and he just punked someone out with the, I'm going to paralyze you, and then I'm just going to flinch you into oblivion and coil, so I never miss my rock slides, like that kind of thing. But Behem's just better in terms of things that it offers for the team. Like, that's just an upgrade. There's not too much to say there.
No. Next up, speaking of better, we got John.
Yeah, so he didn't have a weather mode, so he got rid of something that only wants to operate in the weather mode in the Lilligant, because this isn't never mind, spoilers. Uh, but the Rose Raid is just better Lilligant because it's got the sleep powder. It's got decent attacking stats, but it's just basically a fast sleep powder user that's better at its job than Lilligant is, and they have very similar jobs.
Yeah, and
I mean, there's nothing else.
Oh yeah, John's also used Rosa Raid, so he is very comfortable with it. Next up, we got you dropping Rotom Fan for Wheezing. I really like the Wheezing. This was something I was kind of eyeing for a little bit, but man, I'm sad to see Rotom go. Rotom Fan was kind of cool on your team. You were using it very, very well. So I'm not quite sure how this is going to work out yet, but give me your thoughts about what was going on with this one.
Okay. First, I do think Rotom Fan was good on my team, but it wasn't as good in its role as other Pokemon were in their roles, to the point where I could roll compress Rotom Fan out. Wheezing offers me a couple of super useful options. It's got the Misty Terrain option, so I can run, Misty Siege Zamazenta if I want to, and just have a Pokemon come out and have +1 defense and special defense.
Can't get burned.
Stats. Yeah, and it can't get burned. I also can run Neutralizing Gas, which on my team is pretty useful. I can cycle Zamazenta's ability without Zamazenta leaving the battlefield. My Kyurem doesn't care about abilities. And if I ever played a team that was really reliant on abilities, I don't know, maybe a team with like a Tapu Koko, and a Alolan Raichu, like that, those kinds of things, then this Wheezing gives me the ability to counter a lot of potential modes. Like Unburden doesn't work if Wheezing is on the field. You can taunt something like a Hatterene. I'm just throwing a couple things out there just because Wheezing is on a field.
Yeah.
So I think Wheezing gives me a lot of potential flexibility to... I always call it a BS denial Pokemon, and I think that's what my team needed more than the Rotom. No matter how much I like the Rotom.
You know what Mon really doesn't care about their ability? Rotom Fan. Yeah, Rotom Fan. Yeah. All right, next up, Tay. No, I'm joking. Next up, we do have Tay, though, dropping the Tangrowth for Serena. I know there was a couple like wishy-washy thoughts in the chat. He already has Rage Powder. And there's not much that Tangrowth offers outside of just, Rage Powder, Sleep Powder, that Serena doesn't. You mostly want to run Tangrowth supportive. Okay, well, you already have that support option. Granted, you are sometimes pigeonholing that support into one Mon, but Serena does offer just so much for what he's doing, as we've seen recently with him picking up his first win. Serena, I think, can help with a lot of that. No fake outs, no priority taunts. You just helping out a lot. Also with great coverage, great offenses, and a decent speed next to his newly acquired Hawlucha that he's already used to some success. So yeah, I know there was some wishy-washy, but I'm actually a big fan of this trade.
I think it's probably a good trade for him. In this league, I don't think Rage Powder is as big this season as it has been in seasons past. And Serena's another one of those BS denial Pokemon that I just think is going to be generally solid on a lot of teams.
Yeah, and the physical offense is kind of important for what he's doing.
Yeah.
So moving on, we do have our first match, and I'll go ahead and let you take this one. This is Anthony and Toxic.
So yeah, we've got Anthony and Toxic this week, and I've picked two Prankster setters. I'll tell you why specifically from Toxic's side first. If you look at Anthony, what does he have that's threatening? He's got the Venusaur, the Dragapult, the Barraskewda, the Colossal, and the Ninetales, all huge offensive threats. The Diancie to some extent as well, and Scizor. None of them want to be paralyzed. Very few of them want to eat a Charm or a Snarl. Like, nothing on his team, if Toxic runs, Fake Out, Charm, Thunderwave, Snarl, which I think is just like the standard Liepard set. Nothing on his team wants to deal with that. Like, that annoys literally every Pokemon on his team except for maybe Meowstic. So that's why I think that's the selection from Toxic. On Anthony's side, I actually did pick the Meowstic, specifically because I think it's got the potential to neuter some of the damage output if he does go for Toxic goes for his Necrozma Psy spam mode, which I think it could be. I just think these screams on the Meowstic just have the potential to make some of his stuff like Gmax Venusaur, he could bulk it out instead of trying to rely on the speed necessarily. Because, oh yeah, Liepard also gets priority weather. And then Meowstic also gets priority weather. So these two are going to be able to fight each other in weather potentially as well if he does want to go for the weather mode. So I think it's going to be interesting to see the set that these two come. I don't think they're going to be like the kill leaders or anything, but I do think whichever one has a better prankster set is going to have a significant advantage in the matchup.
So you're saying Meowstic going to be more defensive prankster because of, you know, the psychic terrain, and the Liepard honestly
it's
probably
actually
being
be
prankster unburdened. But no, I get that. For me, I picked Dragapult and Indeedee. I know I picked 2 tier 1s, but for very important reasons. So Dragapult gets a lot of coverage. You have to guess if it's physical or special, and it gets a lot of coverage to hit everything. But if you're going for the Necrozma Indeedee mode, Dragapult kinda can't do anything. So that's why I picked both of these. You know, if Anthony's going for a physical set, you're not going to be able to click, you know, max flying into the Zapdos because of Indeedee. You can't click the max ghost because of Indeedee into Necrozma. So you really don't want to click max dragon either, because then you're going to Defiant boost the Zapdos. So that's why I picked Indeedee. But like I said, Dragapult, depending on the set, hits everything. And hits everything decently well. So that's why I picked these two. I know they're 2 tier 1s, and Dan likes to rag on me about that, but I think these are very, very important. And we've seen Anthony really like to use the Dragapult so far.
Yeah. I could see special Dragapult coming this week.
100%. Yeah, that's the main reason I put it there. Moving on, we got Ryan and Noah. So for this one, I actually picked 2 of kind of the, I wouldn't say support Mons, because of course Azumarill is not support, but the supporting cast of Mons. If you look at Azumarill, you know, it deals with T-Tar, it deals with Excadrill. Porygon can be kind of an issue, but like you're not really worried about it. So I think Azumarill can handle this weather mode that Noah likes to throw out a lot, as well as the Marowak. So it just answers a lot of those heavy offensive Mons. And then alternatively, I think the Umbreon actually offers a lot supportively. So you do got things just like the Liepard, you know, you got the Snarls, you got maybe even a Foul Play depending on how things want to boost. And it's just incredibly hard to kill. So I don't think, just like the last one with Dan's picks, I don't think these will be kill leaders or anything, but I do think these are going to throw a wrench into a lot of prep. So that's kind of why I picked those. Short, sweet, to the point. These are more, hey, these might cause an issue while prepping that might make the matchup a little weird. So why don't you tell me about yours?
So on Noah's side, I went with the Alolan Marowak. It hits the Celesteela and the Latios. And beyond that, if there is a Trick Room option, Ryan's best anti-Trick Room mode is some form of Lurantis, which is also weak to the Marowak A, or the Azumarill, which will beat the Marowak, but, you know, hitting 3 out of the 4 things is going to be effective. Noah's team, I say this a lot, but generally seems soft to fighting types, so Passimian makes sense, and his best counters to fighting types are Alchemy and Intimidating them, except Intimidating the Passimian is a recipe for disaster, so I think this Passimian really has a chance to go in. It gets electric-type moves, so the Gyarados too if it wants it, and I just think it's got the potential to hit just a lot of Noah's team as a low-tier Intimidate deterrence.
For sure, for sure. Next up, this is just you. Go ahead.
All right, so your matchup with Tay. I think this is a really interesting matchup. On his side, I'm going with the Volcarona, because yes, the Tangrowth is supposed to be Serena.
I don't know why it didn't update. Everything else did. All right, here we go.
Okay. I'm still going with the I'm changing my mind. I'm going with Volcarona still. Because again, it hits Melmetal and Latios decently well. It doesn't like the rain mode, but it can hit the Mamoswine. It can deal with Rabombi. It can deal with Tangela very effectively. I just think offensively, it's going to have a lot of pressure into your team, which is part of the reason why I picked Electivire as a defensive option for it as my option for you. But also because the Electivire really pressures the Tapu Fini on his team, and I think that's something that you're going to want to have some pressure on, and it deals pretty efficiently with the Halucha as well. So I think this matchup is pretty straightforward, but Volcarona and Electivire, in terms of mitigating potential top options on the other teams, this looks like to me as the things that have a good chance of overperforming this week.
Yeah, for sure. I've already prepped for this match we play on Thursday, but the Volcarona was actually something that did pose a bit of an issue in prep, so something I wouldn't be surprised to see. But other than that, Tay performed very well last week, so kind of got me a little bit worried, because if he plays like that, he's definitely not an easy game, like you might expect from his first two matches, but I think it'll be a fun one. Me and Tay usually have good matches, so I'm looking forward to this one. Next up, we have Raz and Johnny. This is an interesting match. If you look at the top end, Tornadus Metagross, Thundurus Marshadow, we have an issue here. One hits one hits the other. So I didn't pick either of them. I picked the Marowak for Raz. Just because it's kind of the best offensive option into honestly everything. You're going to have to dodge some tech moves, but maybe under Tailwind or somehow Raz sets Trick Room. I do think the Marowak offensively just checks a lot of the boxes. And then for John, I actually picked the Klefki, surprisingly. Not that it's going to be doing anything offensively, but I do think it can pose a big kind of just stopgap into what Raz wants to do. You can Thunderwave the Metagross. You can just set screens and run out a max. With Raz's team, you have that Metagross. If it's coming with the Tornadus, it's probably going to max turn one. And it, Regidrago is probably the next biggest thing, which I see you have down there. You just neuter it. You can wave that thing, and then it's not hitting your Klefki really at all. So not that Klefki is going to be doing anything super impactful, but I do think it could really throw a wrench into Raz's offenses. But if Marowak goes unchecked, I do think it can sweep.
Yeah, I think Raz has the potential for a couple different, just flow-charted steamroll potentials. And I think Regidrago is one of them, but I actually like Regidrago as a backup cleaner. By that, I mean, late game, if he gets rid of the Klefki and the Mr. Mime, for example, and then he just sends out Scarf Regidrago, he wins. There's nothing else on his team that wants to try and stop that thing in the late game.
100%.
But that's also part of the reason why I think this Mr. Mime is going to be important, because it can survive so much, and it can slow down his sort of flow-charted offense, whether in the form of the Marowak or the Metagross. It is flowchart disruption, and that's why I think you picked the Klefki and I'm picking the Mr. Mime for very similar roles there.
Very much so, yes. This is very much a flowcharty match for Raz. If you see this, you do this. And the two mons we picked definitely throws a wrench into that. So yeah, you said it better than I did, and we both said the same thing.
Yes.
Moving on, go ahead and take Hector and Burst. This is the first time we picked, quote, the same mon.
Yes, well, we picked, as you can see, one of us picked the wrong form, and that was probably me. But I also picked the cool form, so I'm the real winner here. But Burst is less soft to ice types than he was at the beginning of the season. But man, does this Darmanitan hit his team. everything but the Glastrier just hates Guerrilla Tactics Darmanitan and really hates it if Snowman mode gets activated. I don't necessarily expect that this week, but it could. It just looks so good offensively into a lot of his team, and that's why I picked the Ferrothorn, because it hits it for neutral. I mean, unless it turns into a fire type, and then it hits it for a lot more than neutral. But Ferrothorn, I think, if it gets up some iron defenses, has some potential in this matchup because his best offensive options are the Hydreigon, Darmanitan, Togekiss, and Blastoise. And of those, only Hydreigon consistently is going to carry something to hit the Ferrothorn pretty hard. Togekiss can sometimes, and so can Darmanitan, but I just think that the Ferrothorn, for some reason, I feel like it's going to have at least one game where it's just sitting there in the late game and being annoying and eventually wins the game. But why don't you tell me about the boring Darmanitan and the Aromatisse?
So you picked yours more for the offensive sweeping option. I picked it alongside the Aromatisse, mostly to stop it. So this is kind of a stopgap into Trick Room. Hector, kind of weak to Trick Room if you look at everything. The Appleton and the Sandaconda, which definitely don't want to go up against a Glastrier. So if you have Banded, Guerrilla Tactics, Iron Head, you're going to be able to chunk that Aromatisse. And currently, I believe that's his only Trick Room setter. Yes.
Yes.
And, oh, man, it's next to Magmar. It's next to Magmar. Banded, Guerrilla Tactics, Rock Slide, hit the Aromatisse with something else.
Hope it flinches. Yep.
Yeah, or hope it flinches, yeah. I just think that Darmanitan offers a lot, surprisingly, to stop Burst from setting Trick Room. And it also can just, maybe carry Superpower or Flare Blitz to just kind of neuter the Glastrier as well. So that's why I picked this one, not so much for the offensive sweeping potential, but more just to stopgap the Trick Room, or at least make it harder to get Trick Room up. I do know there is a rain mode, but it doesn't necessarily look too good into what Hector has. And then, like I said, Aromatisse. If Burst gets Trick Room up, Glastrier kind of just goes in, which is terrifying.
Yep.
But, if Trick Room never goes up, I don't think Glastrier has a good time. So that's kind of what I thought. You are the Glastrier player, so you probably have better eyes for this than I do.
Glastrier doesn't love Blastoise, but the rest of the team, he just dies. Yeah. Even the Crocodile, if you intimidate it, it'll die, and then you'll get the +1 back.
Yeah, pretty much. So next up is just me, and we got Dan and Dina. So this is going to be an interesting match. And you might think, wow, why Magmortar Hatterene? So Magmortar, yes, it is your follow me mon, and I don't think it's hit the field yet.
No. Yeah. Also, Rotom Fan is not on my team.
Yeah, I don't know why these didn't update correctly. I'll have to go through and fix that. But Magmortar actually offers something different than follow me here, and that is a fairy resist and something that can absolutely obliterate a Melmetal. Magmortar can belly drum, but it doesn't have to. It has decent special attack stat. And it gets options to hit really everything. Magmortar does have surprisingly good offensive options in its move pool. And I think if it's supported correctly, and maybe it's like Iron Ball, like Jessica did with the what the hell is that mon called? Magnezone. So it is under speeding, a Melmet. I don't know how fast Magmortar is. I know it's decently quick. But
I think it can underspeed Melmetal.
Yeah, I think so. But it resists the fairy moves. So you follow me, got to deal with the max smite, kind of, because you do have the wheezing now. But you can just kind of work around it. And I think Magmortar does offer a lot in the supportive role and the offensive role. But alternatively, outside of that, your team really doesn't want to deal with Hatterene very much. Zamazenta honestly probably just dies to it. Same with the Kyurem. Primarina does have a good special defensive stat, but what the problem is also what's next to the hat, which could honestly pose more issues than the hat itself. Gigalith doesn't have the greatest special defense stat, and then everything else really doesn't want to be looking at it. So I do think Hatterene is going to not only facilitate a lot of what Dina can do, but also what's going to be next to it is going to be a bigger issue, which is kind of what Jess dealt with as well. You know, the Hatterene, yes, it was doing good damage, but the things next to it was honestly doing more. You know, like the Melmetal or the specs Indeedee like she was bringing. So I love the hat into you. So you're going to have to find ways around that, and you can't really, taunt it without wheezing on the field. So why don't you tell me about this matchup? It's interesting.
Yeah, I haven't looked too much into it yet. Magmortar, I think, is an interesting option. Wheezing probably comes this week. I mean, Wheezing does look very good into a lot of what Dina does, so it probably comes, but there's a chance that it doesn't. Honestly, I haven't looked at it super extensively enough, but I could see this being either both wanting Trick Room or us both trying to go fast, and I don't know which one is going to be more advantageous for me. So it'll be a fun one to try and prep out.
For sure. Go ahead and take the next one. We got Gumi and Dark.
Yeah. So Gumi's got a very interesting team, and the matchup with Dark is very interesting as well, because Volcanion is an issue for a lot of his team, and so is the Vikavolt. Like, yes, Goodra is a special tank. We all know Goodra is a special tank. But Goodra can only do so much by itself, and Volcanion can kill everything but Goodra and Melodic in a single hit on this team, I'm pretty sure. Maybe not the Pincurchin, but everything else Volcanion can one-shot.
It gets Earth Power, doesn't it?
Max. Yes, it does get Earth Power.
All right. Kills everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it does get Earth Power. And then, so I think that's a good one on your pick. But for me, I did pick the Squirtle because it can run Focus Sash and Follow Me, and a lot of Volcanion's best moves are single target. So if it can, say, be next to a Victini with Wild Charge or something, that could potentially be an issue for Gumi. But for Gumi, that's also why I picked Vikavolt, because it can deal very effectively with the Squirtle, with the Corviknight, with the Melodic, with some of these bulkier options that could be pivoted in a way to try and wall the Volcanion. So I think the Volcanion and the Vikavolt together work very well as an offensive duo into everything but the Goodra, which is why I'm sure you picked Goodra. So why don't you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, so obvious pick, like you've already said, is the Volcanion. It hits everything besides this Goodra, which is, again, why I picked it. So, Gumi's team is very specially based outside of Rillaboom. Okay, Sap Sipper. Rillaboom ain't doing anything. And the Grimmsnarl. I almost wanted to pick the Grimmsnarl, but I think it kind of has to be a little more supportive in this matchup to really do what you want. But outside of that, you know, Goodra's kind of eating a lot of these hits and hitting things for super effective. Goodra has a phenomenal move pool. Granted, its offensive potential isn't outstanding, but what's killing it? You know, you could probably kill something faster than they can kill you, which is kind of the whole gist of Goodra being a max option if you don't have like a policy proc for it. Like Naganadel. You really don't want to hit it with a dragon special move because A, it's going to live it. B, if it's carrying policy, you just screwed yourself. So Goodra hasn't even been brought to a game, and I do think this is kind of where he's going to be able to let Goodra shine. And then, like I said, of course, Volcanion just looks phenomenally good. Moving on, Charles and Jess. Is this the last one? It is. So, me and Dan were talking while we were kind of putting our mons on these slides. The pick'ems are almost unanimous, of course, other than me, are almost unanimous to Charles. But if you dive into these matchups, that is not the case. This is a very weird matchup, and this is at the beginning of the video, if you remember me saying, there's a lot of these matchups that aren't so cut and dry like some people might think, and this is definitely one of them. This is my game of the week. I do think this is going to be super interesting. It's going to be all about positioning. So for Charles, I picked the Blastoise, and this is going to allow a lot of positioning, as well as potentially help fade some of those super effective hits into the Genesect, into the Lele, potentially even into the Terrakion or the Nidoqueen. So again, I hate to see Blastoise just mitigated to that support role, but that's kind of what Charles has to do with it. But on the other side, I picked Magnezone. So outside of tech moves and the Genesect just as a whole, Magnezone actually looks really, really good. You know, it hits the Lele, Blastoise, Terrakion, Drifblim, Weavile, Turtonator, Audino can sit down there. But it hits a lot of things, and its special attack stat is huge. And its bulk isn't the worst. So if you can fade, again, maybe with the Togetic or something, fade some of those hits from, say, a fast Terrakion, I do think Magnezone has the potential to just kind of sweep if the circumstance is correct for that to happen. I've already seen her team, so I don't want to say too much. But Dan, what do you got?
Yeah, I've got the Cursula and the Urshifu here. I do think if Charles goes for a Trick Room mode, Ghost types generally line up decently into Jess. Obviously, she's got really good ways to hit them as well. But I do think the output of the Cursula could have one-shot potential on the Urshifu, Mew, Mimikyu if you break Disguise. It doesn't look awful into the Moltres. It can probably survive something from Magnezone. Like, I think it's just an interesting glue piece here with a lot of threatening potential into some of her better options. And for Jess, I picked the Urshifu because Surging Strikes just looks so good into so much of Charles's team if she can deal with that Blastoise, and Close Combat covers a lot of the rest of it. Like, Genesect probably lives, Lele absolutely doesn't live a Surging Strikes unless I have no idea what I'm talking about with my math. Neither does Terrakion.
It can be close on the Lele.
Okay. Celebi's, I mean, it exists, and it might come this week. Drifblim probably doesn't like Surging Strikes. Weavile doesn't like Close Combat. Nidoqueen doesn't like Surging Strikes. Cursula doesn't like Surging Strikes. It goes on. So I just think there's a lot of offensive output potential in some sort of like Sash Urshifu, for example.
For sure. I've already said mine. What is your pick of the week?
Ooh, let's see. I think my pick for game of the week, I don't want to say me and Dina, but that's probably up there. I might actually go with Toxic and Anthony. Toxic hasn't dropped a set yet, only losing to a forfeit from scheduling issues, and I'm interested to see how he matches up against Anthony's team.
Yeah, this was going to be mine until I really kind of dug into the matchup. Like I said, disclaimer, we usually only take about 10 seconds to look at these, but you know, with Jess living with me, I kind of took a little bit more time looking at hers, not for this video, just questions and not even suggestions, just questions that she might have while prepping. But yeah, this matchup looks incredibly fun. And Toxic as a player, man, this is season 4, and he is doing nothing but improving. So Anthony is no small task. So I'm looking forward to this one. But with that is going to wrap us up. Any final words?
We have a really close season, 3 weeks in, and we don't have any coaches without a win, and only 2 coaches that are undefeated.
Yes, sir.
So we'll see how long that trend is going to continue, because if it's a close season the whole season and everyone's fighting for playoffs at the end, that I count that as an absolute success.
100%. So, yeah, we're done. So we'll see you in the next one.